Howdy peeps and non-peeps, down into the void here again. You are looking at Army. He's my stuffed armadillo that I got in the state of Texas. I swear I'm not trying to do a pro-Texas vlog here, I swear. I just wanted to kind of get a little more into what because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my channel here. So I'm trying to figure out some things to do, and one thing a couple people have mentioned that I've talked to is kind of let people know who I am and what this is about. One of the first things I wanted to address was the name of the channel. Dan Fault is my name. That's kind of easy. And Into the Void is kind of a thing I've started really kind of thinking about, because my life has become so routine lately that most of what I used to do, because I used to be a really creative guy, most of what I used to do creatively, I mean, honestly, it just seems to have just gone out the window. And I really feel like when I look into my head and try to come up with ideas anymore, it's like looking into a void. So, dropping the Hulk after a while, because it's a little wordy, and I just think because it sounds more like stand into the void, with the V on the stand, but so it's kind of a play on words there. So that's the most creative thing I've come up with in a while. Anyway, so I went online and I looked up one of those, or a list of questions, kind of like get to know you questions. And I'm going to do about 10 of them to start off with. And the first one says, who is your hero? Now, growing up, I didn't really have any heroes. I wasn't really into comic books or anything like that. I didn't really have a hero. And then my dad, probably around the 90s, probably at the early 90s, so I was about 9 or 10, he quit drinking and smoking at the same time. So that was something. I mean, I didn't really know a whole lot about drinking or smoking at the time, but my grandfather, not his dad, my mom's dad, my grandfather, a couple years, I think it was in '89, he killed himself after receiving a DUI, after telling everyone in his family that he had quit drinking, and he didn't want to go to court or risk going to jail for that. So right before his birthday, he killed himself. And so my dad quitting drinking shortly after that really kind of resonated with me, and he was pretty much the closest thing I ever really considered to a hero for a while. Number 2 on this list is, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? Well, I guess the best thing to say is I have a heart problem that's sort of a birth defect. My mitral valve took the first hit, and I had to get that replaced when I was 12. And a few years ago, we learned that I need to get my aortic valve replaced. So, and after a couple of strokes and some in and outs in the hospital, I've still not had that replaced yet, but they have ruled out a heart transplant, so there's good news on that one. But when I was 3, we lived in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, for about 15 months. And I don't remember a whole lot of it. I do remember an overly abundant smell of diesel everywhere. I do remember that the steaks that we had were very, very tender and very good. I remember getting peanut butter, not in jars like we get here in the States, but they were in little plastic buckets. I think the closest thing you'll see to them around here in the States are the buckets that lard comes in sometimes. Just little plastic, about 1 gallon bucket. And I suppose if I'd really like to go anywhere, I'd like to try to visit or live there. My Spanish is horrible, so I'd have to kind of learn, but from some research I was doing from the last presidential election, or shortly after, the requirements to get citizenship in Argentina are actually quite low compared to a lot of other countries. It's not one of the easiest. I've seen some videos that have listed some of the easiest on YouTube, and it's not one of them, but really the citizenship problem is probably not nearly as hard fought as it is here in the United States, and I think they're a little more relaxed about it, because once you move there, from what I've read, once you move there, you pretty much have to start the paperwork, and you're almost given every right a citizen is given, except for a few, which I think include voting and serving on juries, or if they have juries, I'm not entirely sure. It's been a long time since I looked this up. But yeah, I wouldn't mind living in Argentina. Be interesting to have all the seasons on the other side of the year. That would be kind of interesting. And you're kind of close to the equator, so that should make it interesting. The number 3 question here is my biggest fear. Now, usually when I answer this question, the answer is ladders. What I mean by ladders is when you have those aluminum like extension ladders, or even a wooden ladder like the one my stepdad had as I grew up. Basically, when you put it up so that you're going on the roof of a house and it's not really attached to anything except through gravity, not being an idiot, it's just a lot easier it's just something that scares me, because it wiggles and I don't feel stable, and I'll do it, but it's just not something I'm real comfortable with. On top of that, and I'm probably going to get a lot of laughs for this, because it's sad but true, bugs. Bugs is another one of my insects. Mostly grasshoppers, moths, Lately, the butterflies have been kind of getting to me a bit. It seems sad enough that the less dangerous the insect is, the more afraid of it I am. You know, grasshoppers aren't going to kill you. They probably wouldn't even hurt you unless you're moving really fast and one hits you in the wrong spot. But they still just, one gets on me and I can't really do anything about it. I'll brush it away really quickly. Now, on the odd part of the spectrum here, if I see a spider, unless it's like a brown recluse or a black widow or something, I tend to just leave them alone. They do their thing. I'm doing my thing. We do what we do. As long as they don't scare me, by getting like right up in my face when I'm not expecting them and I see something and I'm like, ah, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's about the only time I purposefully, I don't purposefully kill spiders unless they're hazardous to your health. The next question is your favorite family vacation. Growing up, most of my vacations were spent going to Colorado because my parents were divorced and my dad had visitation rights, but we lived in California and he lived in Colorado. And so what happened is we would go in the summer and every other Christmas. Excuse me. So we would go to it's basically north of Denver. It's a little city called Commerce City. I would spend most of my time at my grandmother's house, and some time at my dad's house, and sometimes my uncle's. But the overall general idea is we were there to visit my dad. And we would go to places in Colorado like we would go to the Denver Museum. We went to the zoo now and then. My grandfather had a boat most of the time we lived or we were out there. He had a boat, so we would go to Jackson Reservoir, which is kind of in sort of eastern central Colorado. And then after a while, we went to Chatfield, and we then started going to Bar Lake. And we would camp and we would boat and swim and ski. I didn't learn to ski while I was with them. I actually learned much later how to water ski when my stepdad bought a boat. And he made it real fun because I guess he thought it was some kind of competition between the skier and the boat driver to get me to buck off or something. Because I was just trying to stay up. And I was starting the initial stages of my recent problem where I had a problem with my aortic valve. And so I was finding it kind of hard to breathe while I was up there. Or while I was up. And so my being up really didn't last a real long time, but when I was up, it was like some kind of weird water rodeo, I guess. So the next question is, what would you change about yourself if you could? That's easy. My heart problem would be number one. Number one problem I have is my heart. Without that, I would have gone a lot further in karate. I got up to my brown belt in karate before I moved to Colorado for college. and I would have probably gone a little further, but I didn't know where, or I was being picky at the time, and I didn't know where a dojo of my style would be. And then later on, I moved back to California and moved back to Colorado again, and I looked it up and I found a dojo of my style, but it was like a 3-hour drive one way. And I'm not going to drive from Thornton to Montrose just to go do karate. And my heart problem. So, as it is, when they replaced my mitral valve, they put me on anticoagulants, which means my blood is thinner, which means if I get hit really hard, I could suffer internal bleeding, and it could lead to my death. So they recommend not doing contact sports, and I had my mitral valve replaced when I was 12, and I took karate in college, so I wasn't exactly following doctor's orders at the time. The next question is, what makes you really angry? Well, mostly injustice. I don't like people picking on other people, especially for things that they can't control. You know, if you have a medical condition, you can't really control that. People come along and they make fun of you for it. That kind of gets on my nerves. Also, I'm mostly an introvert, so I tend to try to keep to myself, in that I don't like to have a whole lot of attention paid to me. But, so one thing that really gets me angry is when people won't stop bugging me about something or everything, or, you know, just kind of being on my case about stuff. It's just gets on my nerves. Okay, the next question is, what motivates you to work hard? Ironically, being angry. Sometimes music, but mostly being angry really kind of gets me moving a little faster, working a little harder. The next one is, what that one. What is my proudest accomplishment? Well, mostly that would be my brown belt in karate. I also took a separate Kubudo course. That's karate weapons. And I got up to a green belt in the class where they actually ranked it like that. And I also took a Tai Chi class. And the worst injury I ever got when doing karate was I had the wind kicked out of me once during a tournament when I was sparring. And but when I took Tai Chi, my worst injury was breaking this toe right here. That one. And I was doing a Tai Chi sword form, and you're supposed to jump and flip around. Well, I jumped the wrong way, and everything moved but my toe, and I ended up cracking my toe, and before I landed. Now, I was able to do that class because of the adrenaline and the fresh break. But the next few classes I sat out, or just took it easy. I mean, it's Tai Chi. It's not like it's karate where you're sparring or anything. But I didn't exert myself a whole lot. And then the next question it asked was, what's the last movie I went to see, and what did I think? Last movie I believe I saw in theaters was, wow, that's going back. think we went to see, my wife and I went to see Star Wars The Force Awakens. And I thought it was pretty good. It was, in my opinion, it was a rehash of A New Hope, but with different characters. So I guess I was okay. And let's see. And the last question says, what did I want to do when I grew up as a kid? Oh, that kind of varied. I could never really answer that question. I didn't know. But some of the contenders were postman, mailman. Let's see here. I think I wanted to be a fireman at one point. Probably not a good idea because I cannot handle heat. I used to be able to handle cold very well, but lately that's been kind of something I've been not doing too well with either. But I'm really bad about heat. We got a hot day here in Texas. It is. I just want to shut down. Well, that's the 10 questions that I'm gonna answer right now. The only other thing I wanted to add was something we did in several classes that I've taken, and that's 2 truths and a lie. And so basically what I'll tell you is 3 statements. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is a lie. And you let me know which one I lied about, okay? In the comments. So the first thing I'm going to say is I've been disowned by my dad. I had a coworker threaten to rip my heart out. And I've lived in 3 separate countries.